Don't scroll. I know your thumb was already moving. Stop. I need you to do something first. Put your phone down or sit back from your screen. Feel the chair underneath you. Feel the temperature of the air on the back of your neck. Now tell me the last time you actually looked at the corners of the room you're in. Not glanced, looked. I want to tell you about Andrew Jackson. You know the face. The $20 bill? Look at it if you have one nearby. That is the face of a man who took a sword slash across his face from a British officer and made no sound, not because he felt no pain, but because he refused to give pain to an enemy, who carried 2 bullets inside his body for the rest of his life, who walked away from every battle, every wound, every man who thought they could break him. In 1819, that man packed up his camp in the middle of the night, climbed onto his horse in the dark, and rode away from a farm in Robertson County, Tennessee, and said these exact words: "I would rather fight the entire British Army than spend another night with the Bell Witch." He never went back. He never explained why. 2 presidential terms, more battles, the death of his wife, the slow approach of his own end. Andrew Jackson never wrote a single word about what he experienced in that house. He took it to his grave. So before we go any further, sit with this question. Not what the Bell Witch did, not what it said, what it had to be to make Andrew Jackson take it to his grave. That question is going to drive the next hour. And the answer is so much worse than anything you're imagining right now. Build this place from the inside. You are standing in the Bell farmhouse, Robertson County, Tennessee, fall of 1817. The walls are log, close, the ceiling low enough that a tall man thinks about door frames. The smell is tallow candles and wood smoke and 9 people living in a contained space. The floors are wide plank rough wood that holds cold from underneath. At night, and understand this night, the 1817 frontier night, there is no light pollution, no glow on the horizon, no hum of electricity. When the candle goes out, you are in a darkness that people today have genuinely, truly never experienced. The kind of dark that has texture, the kind that feels like it's touching you back. This is where John Bell lives. 52 years old, 328 acres of Red River farmland, 9 children, a wife named Lucy, a reputation built one careful year at a time. His handshake means something here. Lucy, hold on to her. She is the still center of everything that follows and everything that breaks. Is the kind of person a house is different without. Strong in the way quiet people are strong, deep and invisible until something tries to break it. Their youngest daughter, Betsy, is 12 years old. In the fall of 1817, the Bell family is the American frontier dream standing on solid ground. And something notices them. It starts with knocking. You're in your bed. The house is settled. The dark is complete. Something knocks on the wall beside your head. Not loud. 3 knocks. Even spacing. Deliberate. Like someone who knows you can hear them and wants you to know they know. You lie still. Raccoon, branch, old house settling. 3 more knocks. Same wall, same spacing, right beside your head. John Bell goes outside with a lantern into the real cold. The kind that gets into your fingers before you've taken 10 steps. And walks the entire perimeter. Every wall, every shutter, every board. Nothing. He goes back to bed. He doesn't wake Lucy. He doesn't want to worry her. This is the first mistake. The knocking becomes chains. The sound of heavy iron dragging across the floor directly above them. The second floor room where nothing lives but stored grain and old furniture nobody has touched in months. in the middle of the night, in the complete dark. John Bell takes his lantern upstairs. The grain sits undisturbed. The floor has no marks. The candle flame doesn't even flicker. The room holds its breath. He goes back downstairs. His foot is on the last step when the dragging starts again. Stand on that last step with him. Your own house, your own second floor. You just stood in it. Your own eyes found nothing, and it's moving behind you before you reach the bottom. Then the children start waking up. Not from sounds, from pain. You are 12 years old, asleep in the complete dark. Something grabs your hair, not touches it, grabs it, fingers closing, pulling with sudden force that yanks you from horizontal to sitting upright before your eyes open. You come out of sleep into pain and dark, hands going to your scalp, finding the specific burning soreness of hair taken in a fist. Nothing in the room, nothing at the window, nothing anywhere. Then it finds Betsy. Past midnight. Lucy is almost asleep. The house has settled. Then Betsy screams. Not a nightmare sound. The sound that comes from below fear. From the place where the body registers something before the mind has language for it. Lucy is in the hallway before she's made any conscious decision to move. She pushes open Betsy's door, holds the candle up to her daughter's face, and stops. There is a handprint on Betsy's cheek, not a bruise developing slowly. A handprint, fresh and vivid, left by something that pressed its palm flat against a sleeping child's face with enough deliberate, considered force to leave a complete impression. Every finger, the heel of the palm, pressed into a 12-year-old girl's face while she slept. Like it wanted to be remembered. Lucy holds the candle so close, the flame nearly touches Betsy's skin. She can see every line, every ridge, the complete shape of a hand belonging to nothing in this house. Betsy's hand comes slowly to her own face. She says, and Lucy writes this in her journal, underlined, "Mama, I didn't feel it coming. I just felt it land." John Bell stands in the doorway, holding a lantern that illuminates absolutely nothing that shouldn't be there. And somewhere in the dark of his own house, the thing that just struck his sleeping child is looking at what's on his face, and it is satisfied with what it sees. One neighbor, a large man named William Porter, is in the Bell parlor weeks later when an attack happens. He lunges toward the sound. His hand closes on something. He tells this story for the rest of his life, always with the same pause before the detail, always with the same expression of a man who wishes he didn't know what he knows. He says it felt like a handful of wet fur, warm, dense, and then simply not there. He throws it toward the fire by pure instinct. A smell floods the room, sulfurous, wrong, the smell of something burning that has no business burning. The attack stopped for the rest of that night. Just that night. What was in William Porter's hand? He died without an answer. And whatever he grabbed, whatever he threw into that fire, it came back. It always came back. John Bell finally breaks and tells his closest friend James Johnson everything. Johnson comes that night, sits in the parlor, hears it all. Then he opens his Bible and reads aloud. The house goes silent, not gradually, instantly, like a switch thrown. Johnson stops reading mid-verse. The silence holds. He closes the Bible. The sounds return. Opens it. Silence. Within weeks, the Bell farm is a destination. Neighbors ride hours to sit in the parlor after dark. Every single one of them hears it. And the entity, as if it was waiting for an audience, as if the audience was always the point, begins to perform. You are in that parlor. Candlelight making a small ring. Outside the ring, dark and close. and from somewhere you cannot locate, not a corner, not a wall, from the air itself, something begins to whisper. You lean forward without realizing. Breath held. Every person in the room leaning towards something none of you can see. Over days, over weeks, the whispers become words. The words become sentences. And the Bell Witch begins to talk. It knows your name before you give it. The nickname only your mother used. The one you haven't heard since she passed. It recounts a private conversation from your kitchen 2 weeks ago. In your words. In your wife's exact tone. It quotes entire passages of scripture verbatim. It argues theology with ministers and wins. It sings full hymns in a voice that hardened frontier people describe as genuinely, disarmingly beautiful. Like music that learned itself from the source. And then, in the same breath, it says something that makes men look at the floor. It takes on multiple voices simultaneously, distinct personalities arguing with each other in the same room. It gives itself names. Black Dog. Mathematics. And one name it returns to most often, most comfortably, like putting on something familiar. Kate. Named for a neighbor woman named Kate Batts. Hold that name. The first full, clear statement the entity makes to the Bell family. Multiple witnesses, multiple independent accounts, same words every time. I am a spirit who was once very happy but has been disturbed and made unhappy. Say that slowly. I was happy. Something disturbed me. Something made me unhappy, not a demon, not chaos. Something with a history. Something with a wound. And underneath every act of violence in this story, every strike, every targeted cruelty, every deliberate choice about who gets hurt and who gets protected, underneath all of it is that sentence. Something was done to this entity, and it has decided who answers for it. It says directly, so John Bell will hear it in his own house. I will torment old Jack Bell to his grave. Not a threat, a promise, made publicly, so he would hear it, so he would know what was coming, so the knowing itself would be part of the torment. That is the logic of something that understands anticipation is its own kind of suffering. John Bell hears this promise, in his own home, and he doesn't know why. That not knowing is where the real horror lives. Subscribe and hit the bell right now, because the story I'm dropping next week connects directly to what you're about to hear. An event 40 miles from this farm, 30 years later, that the locals stopped talking about so completely it barely exists in any record. We found it. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Come right back. Reverend Sugg Fort arrives expecting to debunk everything. He is educated, skeptical. He sits in the parlor, asks theological questions at the air, tests it the way you test something you expect to fail. It answers every question, corrects him on 2 points. Argues back with sophisticated reasoning Fort has to acknowledge he cannot counter. Fort asks what it wants. It says it wants John Bell. Fort stands up, leaves without a word to John Bell, gets on his horse, goes home, and writes to his bishop. That letter exists in the historical archive today. He writes that he cannot explain what he heard, that it demonstrated knowledge no human should have in that room, that he knows what it isn't. It isn't a trick. A trained skeptical minister went there to expose a fraud and left writing letters saying he didn't know what he'd encountered. Think about what something has to be to do that to Sugg Fort. Now multiply it by Andrew Jackson. Past midnight. Lucy Bell almost asleep. From the room directly above her bed, the empty second-floor room, she hears a child laughing. She lies completely still. thinks one of mine. But she knows her children's sounds the way she knows her own heartbeat. And this sound is not one of those sounds. This is a child laughing the way a child laughs when shown something wonderful. Pure delight, coming from the room where nothing lives. She cannot make herself move. It lasts 10 seconds, then stops. And the voice that comes after is not a child's voice. It says her husband's name. Once. Clearly. Then silence. Lucy writes in her journal, "I pulled the blanket to my chin and did not sleep again until morning." She notes she could tell from the silence beside her that John was awake, that he heard everything, that neither of them said a single word. Two people in the complete dark, in the house one of them built, listening to silence that follows the sound of their name from the empty room above them, neither reaching for the other, just lying there. By 1819, the Bell Witch is famous across multiple states. It reaches Andrew Jackson. He assembles a party, soldiers, an aide, and one man who introduces himself as a witch tamer, a professional, with equipment, with methods, with the total confidence of someone who has never stood in the room with what he claims to specialize in. You are riding with Jackson's party. Good day. Clear, flat road. The wagon stops. No warning, no reason. Horses strain and go nowhere. Wheels locked as if spiked into the earth. 6 men push and the wagon does not move. You check the wheels yourself. Sound hardware. Dry, flat road. No physical explanation. Jackson checks them too. He straightens up and looks at the completely empty road ahead. And then from the air, directly in front of your face, right there, in full afternoon daylight, a voice speaks. Not from the trees, not from behind anything, from the empty road. "All right, General. The wagon can move now." The wheels turn freely. The horses pull without resistance, as if nothing happened, as if the last 10 minutes simply didn't occur. You look at the man beside you. He looks at you. Nobody says anything. Jackson laughs, gets back on his horse. 2 men from that party wrote about this separately in accounts found in different archives decades later. Both said the same thing independently. Jackson was not actually laughing. There was something else on his face underneath it. Neither wrote what it was. They didn't need to. They arrive at dusk. The voice is already in the yard before the horses reach the gate. It knows every man's name. The nickname Jackson's mother used for him, a name almost nobody alive still knows. For the first hour it performs, sings, quotes scripture, makes men laugh against their will. Then the witch tamer stands up, produces his silver bullet, announces his method, loud, certain. The entity goes completely silent. The witch tamer grows more confident in the silence. He begins his ritual. He is almost smiling. Then he screams. He hits the floor and grabs his leg, rolling, howling that something is sticking him with pins, over and over, same spot, methodical repetition. And every person in that room watches, and there is nothing near him. Nothing. The voice comes back, comfortable, satisfied. "Take your silver and your bag and your prayers and get off my property." The witch tamer gets up, walks to the door, opens it, walks through it into the night, gone. Never seen in Robertson County again. Jackson orders his men to stay. Second night, past midnight. You are lying on the floor of the Bell farmhouse. The fire has burned to almost nothing. The silence wakes you. Not a sound, but the wrong quality of silence. Silence with something inside it. You watch Jackson get up without lighting a candle and move to the door in total darkness without making a sound. He opens it. He steps into the hallway. He stops. Two men wrote about what followed in separate accounts. They don't agree on the details. One says he saw a shape in the hallway, human height, completely still, not moving, not making any sound. One says it was a light that moved with unmistakable intelligence, stopping when Jackson stopped, turning when he turned, following him back to his room and sitting outside the door until dawn. Both accounts agree on one thing. Jackson spoke to it, asked what it wanted. It laughed, and the laugh went into the wall. You lay on that floor and listen to something laugh and dissolve into the wall of the Bell farmhouse, and then you lay in the silence that came after, and you did not sleep again. By sunrise, Jackson had given the order. We're leaving. Andrew Jackson rode away from Robertson County, Tennessee, and never looked back. Never wrote one word about what he saw in that hallway. Carried it in silence until his death. You tell me what something has to be to do that to Andrew Jackson. 2 weeks after Jackson's party leaves, a neighbor woman is walking the road to the Bell farm in full daylight. From the tree line 30 feet to her left, she hears voices. Many voices overlapping. The sound of a crowded room heard through a wall. She walks toward it. The voices get louder, clearer. She almost makes out words. She reaches the edge of the trees and steps between them. Empty woods. Nothing moving. No one there. The moment she steps between the trees, the voices stop. Instantly. Mid-word. She stands in the silence of the woods. The specific silence of something that was just happening and is very quickly pretended not to have been. She walks to the Bell farm as fast as she can without running. Tells Lucy what she heard. Lucy listens. Pours coffee. Sets the cup down. It does that sometimes. Stay in the middle of the road from now on. Don't go near the tree lines. The way she says it, the way you talk about weather, the way you talk about something you've accepted because there's nothing else left to do. That is more frightening than anything that lives in the tree line. Betsy Bell is in love. His name is Joshua Gardner. Good family, a few years older. Everyone in Robertson County assumes they'll marry. It's simply the direction things are. Heading, the way water moves downhill without being told. Every time Joshua visits, the attacks on Betsy get worse. Not slightly. Sharply. As if his presence is a specific provocation. As if something running at a steady simmer boils the moment he walks through the door. The voice starts saying his name. Joshua Gardner. Joshua Gardner. Over and over. No explanation. Just his name. In that voice. Like something marking territory. Joshua starts coming less. He doesn't stop loving her. He stops coming because the equation is clear. His presence makes it worse for her. In the only way available to him, he tries to protect her. By removing himself. And Betsy, 14 now, 2 years of her childhood consumed by this thing, watching her father hollow out. Watches the boy she loves pull away and understands exactly why and has nothing she can say about it. You are Betsy Bell. Asleep. The house is quiet. You wake hearing your name. From outside your window. In Joshua's voice. You go to the window. Empty yard. Dark fields. Nothing. You tell yourself, a dream. You go back to bed. 3 nights later, the same thing. You stop going to the window. You lie there and hear your name in his voice from outside and stare at the ceiling and wait for it to stop. And Joshua, across the fields, in his own house, is waking up at night to see a light moving in the field between their properties. Slow, deliberate, not wandering, going somewhere specific. One night he puts his hand on the latch to go out and follow it. The light stops moving and turns toward his window. He stands there with his hand on the latch, the light facing him. in the middle of the field, in the middle of the night. He takes his hand off the latch. He does not open that shutter again until morning. Something was in that field every night. Watching the distance, it was forcing between them, deciding if it was enough yet. In 1820, Betsy writes Joshua a letter, short. It says she cannot move toward marriage while the entity so clearly opposes it, that she will not let what lives in the Bell house make his life harder. She ends the engagement. They never marry. They spend the rest of their lives within a few miles of each other. Same roads, same county, same church Sundays. The memory always right there, just down the road. The moment the engagement is broken, the attacks on Betsy largely stop. It got what it wanted, whatever that was. Here is the question that changes everything. Look at the whole picture. Not just what this entity destroys. Look at what it protects. It attacks Betsy. It targets John Bell. It destroys the engagement. It announces John Bell's death before it happens. And there is exactly one person in that house it never touches. One person it sings to at night. One person it brings gifts for, herbs and fresh fruit appearing on windowsills with no explanation. One person whose sickness causes it to express what can only be described as genuine concern. Lucy Bell. The wife. The mother. The woman who in 1817 in rural Tennessee has no legal property rights, no ability to leave a marriage without losing everything, no power beyond what her husband permits. The Bell Witch loves Lucy Bell and is systematically destroying everyone around her. Hold that. Carry it with you. Because when you see what happens after John Bell dies, who the entity protects, what it says, what it brings, the shape of what you're carrying becomes impossible to look away from. By December 1820, John Bell is dying, and everyone who loves him knows it and cannot stop it. You are one of his sons. You sit with him every day. The jaw spasms are constant now. He can barely eat. His face has gone slack on one side. He has lost so much weight that men who've known him for 20 years stop and look twice. He is 55 years old, and he looks 80. And the voice has never been louder. As if it can smell the end, coming. As if 3 years of patience are finally paying what they were owed. It won't be long now, old Jack Bell. Not a threat, a countdown. You sit in the chair beside your father's bed. You hold his hand. You read scripture. You pray. The voice interrupts every prayer, finishes your verses before you do, in a tone that would be darkly funny if this were happening to someone else's father. Then laughs. You cannot stop it. You cannot fight it. 3 years of trying and nothing has ever worked. Not once. You stay in the chair. You hold his hand. You listen to the thing killing him mock him from the walls of his own house. And you stay. Because staying is all you have. 3 nights before he dies, you are in the chair beside his bed. He is asleep. The candle is burning low. The house is quiet, unusually quiet. The entity has been subdued today, which you've noticed and which you don't know what to make of. After 3 years of constant noise, the quiet feels wrong, like something gathering itself. Then the voice stops entirely, mid-sentence, gone, like a door closing, and from directly beneath the floorboards, not from the walls, not from the air, from the ground below your feet. You hear digging, rhythmic, methodical, patient, the sound of something making space, clearing room, preparing for an arrival. You sit above your dying father and you listen to something dig beneath you. 5 minutes, 6, unhurried, certain of itself. Then it stops. The voice comes back, but it doesn't say your father's name again that night. You write later. Whatever it had been doing, it seemed satisfied. You don't go downstairs to check. You keep your eyes on your father's face. You listen to him breathe. You stay. December 20th, 1820. Lucy reaches for her husband at sunrise. He doesn't respond. She says his name. Nothing. She takes his hand, still warm, still barely breathing, a shallow pull of air every several seconds. Like something winding down from the inside. John Jr. comes back with medicine and stops in the doorway, on the small table beside the bed. Bare when Lucy left the room 20 minutes ago, bare when John Jr. last looked at it. There is a small vial, brown glass, dark liquid, sitting there as if it has always been there. Nobody in the Bell family put it there. John Jr. takes it to the doctor. The doctor gives a small amount to the family cat. The cat is dead within the hour. Before anyone can decide what to do, John Bell draws one more shallow breath and doesn't draw another. The vial disappears before further examination. It's never found. Like this video right now, it helps more people find this story. And I promise you the next 10 minutes are where everything finally makes sense. At his graveside, neighbors who came to the Bell farm for years as if it were entertainment stand in the frozen field not knowing where to put their eyes. The service begins, and from somewhere on the property, the direction impossible to fix, which is its own specific horror, a voice rises, singing, not a hymn, not a mourning song, a drinking song, full-throated, joyful. The sound of something celebrating the conclusion of something it had wanted for a very long time. It sang over John Bell's open grave until the service ended. Then it stopped. Some of those neighbors went home and never spoke about the Bell haunting again. Standing in a frozen field listening to something celebrate a man's death over his grave rearranges your relationship to the word fascinating. John Bell's son Richard grows up and writes a memoir, Our Family Trouble. He is careful, methodical. He tries to be fair. And in it, he writes something most telling Skip. In the final weeks of his life, John Bell told his son he believed he knew what the entity was. Not a demon, not the spirit of Kate Batts, not any of the names it gave itself. Human, someone he knew. Someone with access. Someone with a reason. He kept the name to himself. He went to his grave with it. His son writes it down without the name. A blank in the historical record shaped exactly like a person. The obvious suspect first. Kate Batts. Neighbor woman. Documented financial dispute with John Bell. He charged her what she argued was an illegally high interest rate. She was publicly furious. When the voice named itself Kate, the community made the connection immediately. Did she orchestrate the whole thing? Use local superstition, Confederates, psychology, and timing to destroy the man who wronged her? She had motive. She had grievance. She had a community primed to believe. But there are things no human network could explain. Betsy attacked in sealed rooms. Private conversations from miles away recounted verbatim. Andrew Jackson's wagon on an open road. The vial on the bedside table. Kate Batts cannot account for those, so we go closer, much closer. You are reading Lucy Bell's private journal, the one she didn't expect anyone to read. She writes something without commentary, without explanation. The way you write something you can no longer keep refusing to put into words. She writes that during the worst months of the haunting, she sometimes woke in the night to a voice outside her bedroom door. Not the entity's voice, the one that came from everywhere. A different voice, quieter, at normal conversational volume, speaking close to the door, as if someone was standing right there on the other side. speaking quietly enough not to wake John. She could never make out the words. She writes that at first she thought it was one of her children. She writes that over time she learned it was not. She writes that she stopped getting up to check. You are Lucy Bell, in your bed, John asleep beside you. A voice speaking quietly on the other side of your bedroom door. A voice you've established is not your children. And you have decided to stop getting up to check. What do you know? What have you understood, lying there in the dark, that you won't write down, even in the journal nobody is supposed to read? What does a woman in 1819 do with the things she knows and cannot say, and has no power to change? She pulls the blanket up. She stays still. She decides not to know. That is the most frightening sentence in this entire story. Not the chains, not the handprint, not the drinking song. She decides not to know. Because deciding not to know means she already does. In documented poltergeist cases studied across the entire 20th century, the phenomenon almost universally centers on one person. Almost always young, almost always under extreme psychological stress, almost always in a household with a specific unspoken pressure at its core. The entity does what the central person cannot do, says what they cannot say, acts out what they cannot act out, protects who they need protected, destroys who they need destroyed. Betsy Bell is 12 when this starts. 14 when it peaks. The witch loves Lucy. Betsy loves Lucy. Those are the same feeling. The witch destroys John Bell. The witch breaks the engagement. The witch celebrates the death and then brings gifts to the one person left. Every choice, every target, every act of protection and every act of destruction. One logic. John Bell told his son he believed he knew what it was. He kept the name to himself. Maybe because naming it meant looking at something inside his own house he had spent 3 years unable to face. Maybe because some men, at the very end, choose the mercy of silence over the devastation of saying the thing they've known all along. Maybe because as long as it stayed unsaid, there was still a version of reality where it wasn't true. He chose the silence. He took the name into the ground, and the ground kept it. After John Bell's death, the entity changes completely. Violence drops away. What remains is almost tender. The voice speaks gently to Lucy. When she falls ill that winter, it expresses concern. Brings things to the windowsills, herbs, fresh fruit, placed carefully, meant for her. In the spring of 1821, Lucy is sitting alone in the parlor. The voice comes one last time. Clear, warm, direct. It says it is leaving. It will be gone for 7 years. Then it will return, to the most direct descendant of the Bell family. The house goes completely silent for the first time since the fall of 1817. You are Lucy Bell sitting in that parlor, the room where your husband was attacked for 3 years, where your daughter was struck in front of witnesses, where strangers sat in your chairs and treated your family's suffering like entertainment. The quiet settles around you. You don't write in your journal what you felt. Some things, even in private, you decide not to put into words. 7 years later, 1828, John Bell Jr. is in the family house. The entity returns, stays 2 weeks, tells him things, a coming war between the states, events decades forward. He seals the pages. After his death, they're opened and checked. Several predictions are accurate. The voice says it is leaving again, for 100 years. Then it will return, to the most direct descendant. 100 years from 1828 is 1928. Researchers in the 1920s tracked Bell family descendants, documented unusual activity near the old Bell property that year. Enough to record. enough that families who knew their history kept their children away from the northeast corner of the old Bell land. After 1928, no new date was given. The Bell Witch did not announce when it would return next. You are taking the Bell Witch Cave Tour in Adams, Tennessee. You checked your camera battery in the parking lot. Full charge. You remember doing it specifically. 20 feet inside the cave, your camera dies. The guide doesn't look surprised. Past the bend where the passage curves and the entrance light disappears behind you. You feel something before you register you're feeling it. Cold that starts at your sternum and spreads outward. Not a draft. This cold doesn't move. It's present. It has the quality of something that has been in the dark for a very long time and has just become aware you're here. Every tour, without variation, the guide will not go past this bend after dark. When a journalist asked why, he was quiet for a moment. He said, "It hasn't asked me to leave yet. I'm not going to give it a reason to start." He wasn't joking. The journalist knew he wasn't joking. There is a photograph, taken in 2003, tourist named Dana Shelton, disposable camera, standard tour group, nothing unusual during the visit. She specifically said so. When the photos developed, there was one frame inside the cave. The tour group visible, facing the camera, smiling, the guide's flashlight catching their faces. Behind them, in the section where the light doesn't reach, there is a shape. Not quite human, not quite shadow. Existing in the space between those two things in a way that doesn't resolve into either, no matter how long you look. Multiple researchers have examined this photograph. They don't agree on what it is. They agree on one thing: whatever it isn't looking at the tour group. It is looking at the camera, at whoever will eventually be on the other side of the lens. At you, right now. John Bell is in that ground. His marker still stands in Robertson County, Tennessee. You can drive to Adams today and put your hand on it. A real stone in real ground, and the man underneath it was a real person who experienced real things that nobody has ever fully explained. Lucy Bell lived 27 more years after his death, stayed on the farm, died in 1837. Her grave is a few feet from his. Nobody wrote down what she wanted said over her. Betsy Bell lived into her 70s. One interview, late in life. She said she believed the entity was real, that it had intelligence and specific intent. The interviewer asked if she was still afraid of it. Long pause. Afraid isn't the right word. You can only be afraid of something you don't understand. I understand it better than I'd like to. She didn't explain what she meant. She never did. Andrew Jackson died in 1845. He is on the $20 bill. Look at that face differently now. Look at it knowing what he saw in that hallway in 1819, what he carried in silence for the rest of his life, what he refused to put into words for anyone. A journalist asked him directly about the Bell Witch. He looked at the man for a long moment. I have seen things in this world that I cannot account for, and I am content to leave them unaccounted. He turned away. The interview was over. That was the last thing Andrew Jackson ever said about Robertson County, Tennessee. There are Bell family descendants alive, tonight, right now, in Tennessee, in Kentucky, across this country, in ordinary houses exactly like the one you're sitting in. Turning off lights, lying down in the dark, going to sleep without knowing what they're carrying. They have never been to Adams, never heard this story, never had a reason to wonder about the name they carry. The Bell Witch said it would return to the most direct descendant. It gave a date the second time. This time it didn't. And maybe that's what stays with you. Not what it did, not what it said, not even what it was. Whether it came from outside the human world entirely or lived inside one family's silence and fed on what it found there, which is its own kind of horror, maybe the worst kind. Maybe what stays is simpler. Right now, tonight, somewhere in America, a Bell family descendant is in bed. The house is quiet. They don't know what they're carrying. The Bell witch, in 200 years of history, made promises. Kept them. Made promises. Kept them. If you're still here, if you're aware of your room right now in a way you weren't an hour ago, aware of the corners, the quality of the quiet, the specific sounds your house makes when everything is supposed to be still, that's not editing. That's what a true story does when it's told right. It doesn't end when the video ends. It walks out with you. 3 things right now. Subscribe. Tap the bell. The next video in this series, 40 miles from this farm, 30 years later, an event so disturbing the locals stopped talking about it so completely it barely exists in any record. Drops next week. Subscribe so you're there. Like this video. It's how more people find these stories, and these stories deserve to be found. Comment. Tell me what you think the Bell Witch actually was. Supernatural. Human. Something that lives in the space between those 2 things where the most disturbing truths usually live. I read every comment. Some of what you leave on these videos keeps me up at night in ways this job probably shouldn't. But I keep making them. Make of that what you will. One last thing. The next time you're lying in bed and your house is quiet and you find yourself listening, really listening, to whether it's the right kind of quiet or the wrong kind, that's just this story doing what true horror is supposed to do. At least, that's probably all it is. Probably.